be completing our arrays complex state. Okay,
Hey,
let's
this looks
start.
familiar. This is the little app that we used when we were learning about how saving local variables does not update our UI. And now that we've learned about state, to start us off, your challenge is to convert the code below to use an array that's held in state instead of what we currently have with our local variable here. You can just initialize the state as an array with these same two items. And if I were you, I would call the piece of state that you create things array just like we had before, so we don't have to change anything else in our code here. Pause now and work on this challenge.
Okay, so we can. They have already done this. So we'll work on this next. What do we have to work on then?
Let's go ahead and create. In fact, I'm just going to reuse what I have here. Use state. Still contains my two items. The last piece we need to fix is making it, and that is that add item button will add something to our things array. However, array dot put. Yeah. In fact, not only is it not a good idea, but if I try to do it, we test in here, hit save, and add item, you can see that nothing is going to happen here. Okay, so we know we need to use setThingsArray in order to modify our state, which will actually update the user interface on our screen. So let's use setThingsArray. If you remember back, with setThingsArray or whatever setter function I have, I can provide one of two options here. Pause and think for a second, what are the two different options that I could put into the setThingsArray?
Two different options are a function, an arrow function, or maybe just assign a new value. So maybe here I'll use arrow functions. That means I'll say that so previous array, let's say previous array goes to dot dot previous array and we can state that oh shit, now I don't know, thing 3 I guess. So template string thing and dollar previous array dot length I guess. Let's run this. Amazing. But the problem is, there is a +1 I guess. Okay, I'm gonna clear this. Voila, we have done this. Let's save this. How do I save this? Yep, I've saved this now. Let's go on and continue.
Well, I can either provide it with, and I'm going to put these inside of angle brackets to show you this is not real syntax. I could either put in a bare new value, completely replacing the old value of state with this new value, or I can provide it with a callback function, and the callback function will receive as its parameter the old version of state, which I can use to determine the new version of state. So now I want you to pause for a second and think, which of these options should I use? Should I use the new value option, or should I use the callback function option?
Callback function.
Well, if I just provided a new value, then I wouldn't really be able to add anything to my existing array. I would be simply replacing my existing array. Because what I want to do is add an item to the array, that means that I do depend on what the old version of state or the old array is in order to determine my new array. So I need to provide a callback function here. I'll do this as an arrow function, and I can put in my, let's say, prev things array, or I can simply say pre state if I want to. I'll do this pre things array contextual. And now that I've got this far, I want you to pause and see if you can figure out what I need to add or what I need to return in this callback function to correctly update my array with the new thing that I want to add. If you remember, every time we add item, I want to determine the length of the array, just add thing space and the new length of the array, so we should add the thing 3 like that. This one will be a little tricky if you spend more than prev things array dot push on it. It's not a good idea because that would be modified state array. This prev things to do at this point is to say prev things array dot push. However, again, this is not correct. This prev things array is still a reference to my existing state, and using dot push on it is not a good idea because that would be modified state array. Not only that, but dot push actually doesn't return the array that is modified, it returns the new length of the array. So this would be like replacing all of our state with a number which is 3. So I guess in 2 ways this array doesn't work for us. Remember, I need to return a new version of state. And my state starts out as an array. In fact, my program expects things array to be an array because I'm using dot now. So I need to make sure that when I'm setting a new array that I return a new array. This is a new version of state. Fortunately, with ES6, there's a really easy way for me to spread in my existing array, which I have access to with prev things array, which by itself would give me an array of everything that used to be in there. So this is not yet updating it. However, template strings here, and I'll say thing space not 0 index, and I want it to say 3, I'm going to add 1 to it. In other words, my previous array was 2 items long, and I want it to say thing space 3, so I'm adding 1 at the end. This is getting a little long, so I'm going to put this onto the next line, which means I then have to use a return. And let's just see if this works. Let's save, add item, awesome, look at that. We've got things adding to our list with the correct numbers and everything. If you're feeling hazy or forgetting the array spread
So I forgot
operator and how this works, that's totally
the return keyword, but that's fine.
okay. Although I would recommend that you go study up on the array spread operator because it's so useful. You're going to find yourself using it all the time, especially in React. However, this isn't the only way to do this. There certainly are other ways to make a copy of our original array or to return a new array. We can use a for loop that loops over this array and pushes those items to a brand new array. Then we have our, because if you're feeling hazy or forgetting the array spread operator and how this works, that's totally okay. Although I would recommend that you go study up on the array spread operator because it's so useful. You're going to find yourself using it all the time, especially in React. However, this isn't the only way to do this. There certainly are other ways to make a copy of our original array or to return a new array. We can even use a for loop that loops over this array and pushes those items to a brand new array. Then we add our string here at the very end before we return that whole new thing. Obviously, this is why I'm saying you should just go focus on learning the array spread operator because it's extremely useful. Okay, I do have one big challenge for you. Okay, it's time to put all the knowledge that you've learned lately together into this this challenge. In fact, if you want an extra challenge, you could delete this line where we set up things elements where we're mapping. I figured because it's been a minute since we've looked at this, I wouldn't necessarily make you do this, but if you really want to challenge yourself, you can delete line 13 here and try to do everything completely from scratch. Like I said, I'll leave this here just in case that's a little too much to bite off this time. So see if you can build this all again from scratch. Let me refresh this. We start from a new spot. Of course, this is broken because some of the values are missing. Pause the screencast and see if you can bring this back to a working state. Spot. Of course, this is broken because some of the values are missing. Pause the screencast and see if you can bring this back to a working state. Okay, let's do this. I'll use things array and thing 2, and need to spell things right, then take space, and then the number of brief state likely. I am going to put it back that way. And hopefully this didn't drive too many of you crazy. You can see I refresh everything comes back. I also have taken this on, click out. Sorry if that threw anybody for a loop. Wait to add back in and say when. But this point, I want you to run add item, which will run the settings array function and do all that happens. You won't be able to truly internalize these things that we're learning again. I really hope that you entered that challenge. I know that might be difficult, but truthfully, that's where learning happens. You won't be able to truly internalize these things that we're learning unless you put your hands on the keyboard and really challenge yourself. In fact, I would say that as you come to challenges in this course and really any course on Scrimba, if you don't immediately know the answer, don't just hit play. Go to Google, ask the community, go back to previous lessons in that course. Do whatever you can to try and figure it out on your own. And of course, if you are completely stuck, you can always hit play. In the next class, we're going to see something similar, but working with objects in state instead of arrays in state.
Let's learn object.
Now let's see what it looks like to use an object in state. Here we have a simple contact card. It's got a first name, last name, phone, email, and a property called isFavorite. To kick us off, I want you to see if you can figure out how you might fill in some of these values below instead of using the hard-coded values, using the properties from state. Of course, they will look exactly the same because I just copy and pasted these values from the state above, but you can always test it by changing one of these values in state and seeing if it reflects on your card there. I'll just make that some more test favorite. To kick us off, I want you to see if you can figure out how you might fill in some of these values below instead of using the hard-coded values, using the properties from state. Of course, they will look exactly the same because I just copied and pasted these values from the state up above, but you can always test it by changing one of these values in state and seeing if it reflects on your card there. Pause the screencast and work on this challenge. Let's start with the name. We have the first name and last name together inside the same H2, but they're separated in the state up here. The simplest way to do that is simply to put the first name in its own set of curly braces, put a space, and the last name in its own set of curly braces. Now, because my state is an object, I need to reference the entire contact and then use the dot syntax to access its properties. So I will say contact dot first name, and then the space, which will chain our contact changes. Great. And then I can simply do the same thing for these other properties. This is contact dot phone and contact dot email. Now, I mentioned that we're going to ignore the isFavorite property for now. I have another challenge that I'm going to type out now. You might notice in the images that we have two separate PNGs, one called star empty PNG.
How do I keep forgetting these shit?
Have another challenge that I'm going to type out now. You might notice in the images that we have two separate PNGs, one called star empty PNG and one called star filled PNG. Right now we're just using the star empty PNG, but if this were filled, and let me comment this out so it doesn't break our code, you'll see that it fills in a star nicely as if this contact were a favorite of yours. However, following the declarative nature of React, we want the isFavorite property to be the determining factor as to which of those two images gets used. So your challenge is to use a ternary right here in this line, I'll comment this now, to look at the contact.isFavorite property and determine which of the following file names should be used based on the value of the isFavorite property. Add that to our challenge. Okay, but on line 21, I'll contact.isFavorite. If so, I want to use the star and simply replace and otherwise with star icon. You'll notice I had put backticks here to begin with just to make things a little easier. That's because I knew you were going to be putting in an interpolated value like that. I'll go ahead and hit save. Everything looks the same, but now if I change my isFavorite from false to true in the hard-coded initial value, you get a little filled star. Now that we've learned how to apply state that's in the form of an object to our actual markup, in the next screencast, let's learn about how we can update state when state is an object. Our goal is to be able to click the star icon and have it flip our isFavorite value from true to false or false to true. However, currently our goal is to be able to click the star icon and have it flip our isFavorite value from true to false or false to true. However, currently our isFavorite property is nested inside of this object. When I call setContact, I need to provide a new version of state to replace the old version. However, in our case, I don't want to replace any of this other information. I only want to change the isFavorite value. Many people's first thought is to use setContact, and here you'll see I already have set up a toggle favorite function, which is called anytime the little star icon image is clicked. Right now it's just console logging toggle favorite. The temptation is to use setContact, look at the previous contact in opposite of, if you can figure out what mistake is, see I'll put this on its own line, we'll say return an object where the isFavorite property is the opposite of the previous contact's isFavorite property. However, there is a major problem with doing it this way. I'm not going to hit refresh yet, but I do is the opposite of the previous contact's isFavorite property. However, there is a major problem with doing it this way. I'm not going to hit refresh yet, but I do want you to pause the screencast and see if you can figure out what mistake I have right here.
So he did not pass the entire object, but just replace this property. So this object will not have first name, last name, phone, and other things. So he can probably do dot dot whatever in this and something like that.
Remember that in this callback function, whatever I return from that function will become the new replacement for our contact state. Currently, I have an object with 5 properties, first name, last name, phone, email, and isFavorite. But what I'm replacing it with is an object that only has one property, isFavorite. So if I hit save and then click our toggle favorite, you'll see that all of our other information just disappears. However, it does look like our star is working. I can click our star and it is correctly flipping back and forth, but obviously this is a bug. If you do happen to be coming to this course having had experience in class-based React, this might seem confusing to you. If you've never worked with class-based React, you can ignore the next thing I'm about to say. But in had experience in class-based React, this might seem confusing to you. If you've never worked with class-based React, you can ignore the next thing I'm about to say. But in class-based React, when you use this.setState, it would automatically figure out how to combine your old object with the new property that you're trying to replace it with. However, using hooks with React.useState no longer does this. Okay, everybody can tune back in now. The main point is that I need to make sure that I bring in all of the properties of my old object and then replace the one or two or however many properties you need to replace in what you're trying to accomplish. A very simple way for me to do that is to spread in all of the properties of my old contact. And in this case, I have access to the old contact using prev contact. So I'll bring in all of the properties, and this, by the way, does include the isFavorite property, but then I will overwrite the isFavorite property with a new value. In effect, it's like taking this whole thing, copying it, pasting it in, just like this, where we have our old first name, old last name, old phone, old email, the old isFavorite, and then we're saying, actually, I want a different isFavorite. Believe it or not, this is not a syntax error. Instead, it just takes the second one that's declared, or rather the last one that's declared, and uses that as the actual value for our new object. This is much more verbose than it needs to be, so I will use my spread operator instead, like I had before. I'll hit save. Notice this is filled in because my value.
That's really bad of JavaScript. How can we have the same property name with two different values, and you can actually update the values using the last one? Like the last one is the decider. Why? This can lead to a lot of errors.
Value is true by default. I should probably set that to false by default. And then when I click it, all of the other information stays the same except for the value of isFavorite, which is then redetermining which icon is going to be.
By the way, if we are doing this, is React actually changing these properties, or is just diffing that what has changed in the
Used based on that contact.isFavorite property. I totally understand that this can be complex. This was one of the more difficult things that I had to grasp when I was first learning how to do state in React. So to see if you were paying attention, this is your time to shine. Your challenge is to simply rebuild what we just had. Again, if you get stuck and you don't remember the syntax, don't just hit play and watch me do it. Open a new tab, do a quick query on Google, see if you can find a resource that will help you.
actually it's a fun thing. Okay, so we don't need curly braces, and you can just say not previous contact dot is nice.
Which is then a difficult thing to simply rebuild, find a. So pause the screencast and see, okay, let's do it. What the value, let it pass, say, well, I function body, that works, untact, fault, because you can go back and try it again. As a little me do it alone is not going to help you learn it. So as always, once you feel comfortable enough that you could write the
Refactor silent.
when we last left the meme generator, we were getting a weird unknown error being thrown from React. I looked into it and I realized that it was because we were initializing state as an empty string and React was not taking too kindly to having our image source set as an own. When we last left the meme generator, we were getting a weird unknown error being thrown from React. I looked into it and I realized that it was because we were initializing state as an empty string and React was not taking too kindly to having our image source set as an empty string. So I just went and grabbed a placeholder image for now, and that seems to have gotten rid of the error. Just thought I'd give you a quick update on that error. Our challenge in this screen.
Why is this not there? Okay, now it's working.
Screencast is to update our state so that we can be well prepared as we learn more to save that state and ultimately finish our meme generator. So your challenge is to create an object in state. We'll call it meme, and it should have a property for the top text, bottom text, and the random image that we choose. You can default the top text and bottom text as empty strings, and I would default the random image to the string that I have below text and the random image that we choose. You can default the top text and bottom text as empty strings, and I would default the random image to the string that I have below so that we don't get that same error we had before. Next, I want you to create a separate state variable called all meme images. This all meme images variable is going to hold an array of all of our memes data, which for now you can default to the memes data array that we imported up here. Then lastly, you'll want to update the rest of our code to use these new state variables so that in the end we have a working app the way that it's currently working. So pause the screencast and work on this challenge. We my curly brand random image, which will be the same as what we had before in our old meme image state variable.
Oh wow, we can do this.
Then we need another state variable, so we'll create a new one. We'll say this is all memes data array that we imported about all meme images. And then we have a bit of a gotcha here. Before, when we were just
बिल्कुल जल्दी मीटिंग में बैठा हूँ ठीक है जस्ट फॉर क्विक 15 मिनट्स कैच अप कि आपका कैसा चल रहा है ठीक है आपकी फ्रेंड्स वगैरह भी 3 बजे से पहले बोलना कि हाँ आप जोहो पे देखोगे कोई छुट्टी तो ली है आपने नहीं छुट्टी ली तो अप्लाई करो लीव पे जोहो खोलो